Hi, welcome to City Scene with Mayor Mike Cahill. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski. Your Honor, welcome to the studio.
Hi, Walt. It's really good to see you.
Good to see you. We haven't done a show in a few months.
Yep.
About time that you brought our citizens up to date on what's happening in this wonderful city of ours.
Absolutely.
And I guess today, with the warm weather coming up, we're in the construction season. We're going to be talking about some of the projects. But I do want to say, my feeling myself that I think that your administration, I think one of your legacy items that you can be very proud of is how much you have done to upgrade the infrastructure of the city of Beverly, and I want to commend you on that. That's my own personal opinion. But let's talk about a few things here. I think it was in the paper. I think the purchase has been finalized. The Dollar General parcel,
yep,
which is that store, but there's also some parking behind it. Tell us about that. Tell us about the parking situation. What's going to happen now and later with that purchase?
Yeah, so this actually goes back to the early summer of the COVID shutdown of 2020, when the owners of the property and some developers came to us and they were looking to redevelop. Within the zoning, everything that they were trying to do was pursuant to zoning. And so, we walked around with them, and the one thing I kept coming back to and talking with them was there are 108 parking spaces here in the heart of our business district of our downtown that, granted, we the city don't own, but the city's been leasing them from the Dana family who own the parcel for probably 50, 60 years. And to lose those spaces in the middle of all of our downtown, both for residents and for businesses, really didn't seem doable or sustainable.
Yeah.
So we started working with them to try to figure out a way to do some kind of a public-private partnership to preserve the parking. Problem was they wanted to build out that whole block and put 113 apartment units in, which was going to require them to take all the parking for their own needs plus add more parking. So every way we looked at it with them, and they tried to be good partners, as did we couldn't find a way to do this without spending a lot of the city's money to recreate some of the spaces as opposed to preserve all of them. So finally last summer, we decided we really needed to get an appraisal of the value of the property to see how that squared with, with the things we were considering trying to spend. Appraisal came back and said that the property was worth $7.1 million. At that point, that was less than we were looking at trying to spend to recreate. And so we sat with them. They knew we were getting the appraisal. We told them right away. And we sat with them. We worked it through and agreed on what's known as a friendly land taking or friendly eminent domain.
Yeah.
So we now, and the city council was unanimously supportive of this, which was really appreciated. We all worked through the issues together. We now own the parcel, which means the city, for the first time, owns all of those parking spaces.
Parking spaces, yeah.
So they can be permanently protected as for the city, the community's needs. We also, because the city hall renovation will be starting in about a year, need a place for all of our city departments and staff to be for up to 2 years.
Yeah.
And we've determined that space can be put to that need. So in about a year's time, we'll move all of our offices across the street into there.
Now, let me ask you this. Is there enough floor space? Are you going to move all of City Hall offices there at once, or is it going to be a phased kind of a thing that as you renovate areas of City Hall, those people move but others stay?
It's a great question. It's not fully understood yet, but our plan is that, make an assumption we need to all be out at the same time and for the same length of time. That's how we were looking at it. And there is enough square footage. There's just over 21,000 square feet of commercial space there, so that can accommodate us. We also won't try to hold city council meetings in that space. We have a number of high quality spaces for smaller to medium to larger meetings. Different public meetings that
hearings,
now happen in city council chambers, including city council meetings. So between the high school, the middle school, the library, other spaces, we'll make plans for that, together with the city council. And so, we'll need a little less space than we currently occupy because of that. And it'll be available to us. Now, there'll be a cost to build out that space.
I was going to ask you how much.
But there's a cost avoidance by not having to go rent commercial space
right, sure,
on the private market for City Hall. Yeah. And there's I think, very real benefit of staying right smack in the middle of downtown.
Sure.
For a lot of good
You're
reasons.
You're really across the street practically, right? Yeah.
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 So there are two other points to the parcel. One is that we collectively have understood that there's a real concern about people being able to afford to live in Beverly. Now, we can't solve it with one city project. It's got to be, a continued effort across the community, public and private sectors. But we plan to RFP development rights over that parking for a much smaller development than the Leggett McCall folks wanted to build, for about 50 units of long-term affordable or permanent affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And that development would be smaller scale, most likely parking on a second level that they would build to support the housing units, separate from our public parking, and then housing on a third and a fourth level. Mm-hmm.
So then you would actually then resell the property, or would the city still own it?
There are a number of ways of doing it. We could continue to own the ground that the parking's on, or we could put in a permanent easement for public parking on the ground. So we're looking at that. Nobody needs to make a decision on that because we'll be looking at that over the next several months to figure out the right way to do it. But the thinking is, and we've researched this with the affordable housing community, that it's a doable project. It's a financeable project, both in the private market and through the federal low-income housing tax credits. Mm-hmm. Much in the same way the Briscoe project and the Anchor Point project have been the packages of funding. Right. Any long-term subsidized affordable housing really requires a number of different funding sources. But the largest and the anchor source of funding seems to always be these federal low-income housing tax credits. Yeah. So that's the thinking there, that some smaller number of very low-income subsidized units, and then a larger number of 50 to 60% of area median income. People who are getting priced out of a lot of the older rental housing in the community, as we're looking around town. Okay. And then the last piece is, when we're done living in the commercial space for City Hall, which will be about 3 years from now, then we would turn and we would sell that existing commercial building for future commercial use. Yeah. Because it really should be retail commercial space and activated, and I think the whole community's wanted that for some time. Yeah.
Okay, so now let's look at the other part of that. We've talked about you're going to be moving. So what's happening at City Hall? City Hall, actually, for people who don't know, was actually built as a private residence. Was it not? So
1783.
Yeah.
It's been renovated more recently than that. Yeah. But it was built in 1783, and it's long needed renovations. When it has been on the city's capital plan behind the police station for a number of years. So there were first a number of school projects that needed to happen, then the police station, and now City Hall. And with the former police station being empty, you look at the existing historic City Hall and the not historic old police station that's coming up on 100 years old, but not quite. And you think about all the city staff and departments who are really kind of crammed into spaces that are not conducive to really getting work done the way it needs to be. And then you add in the fact that our health department has been off-site at the senior center, and our inspectional services department has been off-site in the GAR building for years. So those departments really belong back in City Hall, and that's the plan: is to do a renovation, either a renovation or tear down and new construction on the old police department footprint, together with a renovation of the existing City Hall. And we're in the design phase, so there are several alternatives that the architects have put on the table for us. And
eventually, are these other City Hall functions that are in different buildings, everything will come under one roof then eventually?
Everybody back on one. Well, not everybody, but those departments back on one campus. Recreation department will remain at Lynch Park. Obviously, police and fire are where they are. And so, for the most part, it'll be back under one roof. Yeah.
Now, there was a public hearing last night. What was there not on this?
A public meeting.
Public meeting, and anything come of that? What was the high point there?
Yeah, so we're at the point where the architects gave us some ideas, and We pushed back, being our project team of several department heads, and they gave us some more things to look at. And at that point, we said, let's get the employees back involved in the conversation. Let's get the public involved. Let's get the city council as real stakeholders in the conversation, and our permanent building committee. So we've done 2 of those things. We have 2 more still to do. We had an afternoon where the architectural team came in, made the presentation that they made last night,
right,
which is about a 20-minute presentation on 4 different options. And then our staff asked questions and gave feedback, both in the moment and as follow-up. Same thing last night with the public, and we'll be going before the city council at some point in the next month to have a similar conversation, and the permanent building commission that needs to sit with them as they've got some responsibilities on this front. So what came out of last night and came out of the conversations with employees, it's a combination of trying to honor a historic building and create 21st century space, right, that's as needed. Some of the high points, I guess, are we have what they call a double-loaded corridor in City Hall. You walk down the middle hallway, there are offices on either side. A lot of municipal buildings, a lot of government buildings have a corridor along the windows, and the public's in this space, and then there are counters, and then there are offices behind those that the public doesn't, really enter into and spend time in. Well, there are meeting rooms if somebody from a department needs to meet with a member of the public, that those are available to everybody.
Right.
So that's a different way of organizing. Some of it is for accessibility for everybody. Some of it is for efficiencies, and some of it is for security. So that's one decision point: is do we go with a single loaded corridor on the window or double loaded? Another is the city council chambers on the 3rd floor. A couple of their options put the city council in the new building, the annex, on the 1st floor, so that the community can come in and out of the building in the evening and not have to walk through all the floors and by all the offices, but access the city council chambers more easily and more directly. So that's another one. What else are we talking about? Parking. There's going to be parking lost to any of these options. So we won't have quite as much parking, and we don't have enough parking in City Hall's lot today.
It's at a premium.
But at the same time, we have now just permanently protected those 108 spaces across the street, and we need, we've got on-street and in the neighborhood parking, so we've got to look at all of that.
Yeah. Now, let me take a look. Let's go down by the waterfront. I think it's on Water Street, the Rowans parcel. And the city has purchased that already. Is that a done deal? And
yes. So there's a second conversation, right? Rowans, the owner of Rowans decided to close. They put it on the market. It was the business was closed down, and I think a lot of us were sad about that. But then we saw an opportunity because our waterfront has been, in a lot of ways, underutilized for a long time. And now we finally have 2 waterfront restaurants, not just one. Excuse me. And we have a lot of other reasons that people like to go down to the waterfront. We have commercial fishermen, recreational boaters. We have people who like to fish off the piers or just walk along down there. And now we have the 2 restaurants, the Anchor and Mission Boathouse. So we looked at Rowan's as an opportunity to try to create some additional parking spaces. Fortunately, the state had resources. We couldn't probably have pulled this off with just city resources, but 80% of the money to buy the Rowan site came through the Seaport Economic Council and grant program from the state.
Oh, interesting.
Any coastal community with a waterfront, with any type of working waterfront, has access to it. So 80% of the money to purchase purchase Rowan's and now tear down the existing building and put a parking lot in came from the state, which is really important.
Is that what the use is going to be? Parking?
And the plan is completely for parking, landside, and we're hoping it'll yield about 22, 23 spaces. And then on the water side, we'll rebuild the docks and try to make those available to the public in the future.
So that property goes across Water Street. It's on both sides of Water Street, are you saying?
No. If you think about the Rowan's building, if you're looking at the Rowan's building from in front of it, to the left, on the water side, still this side of the train tracks, right? Because it's bounded by the train tracks. Yeah. So you can picture where it is.
Okay.
But just to the water side of the building, there are docks that are kind of dilapidated.
Yeah,
So
yeah, okay.
we'll over time try to rebuild those docks, make them available to the public, and together with parking. That's really the goal: is to help everybody who enjoys the waterfront,
Yeah.
help the businesses down there, and so forth.
Now, just parenthetically, now the Mission Boathouse has been open now for a few months. There was always a concern about parking. How is that played out now? Are the owners okay with? Do the patrons have enough parking? What do you hear about
So
that?
it's all a work in progress. There are some requirements that their approvals to build had some conditions, including that they will park staff off-site and shuttle them on.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that they've been working on, and I believe is in place. It was in place and then it fell down, trying to make sure we get it back in place, because that's something that they're obligated to do. In addition, the owners of the Anchor have struck a deal with the MBTA to create some number of parking spaces right along the train tracks,
Oh, really?
just the downtown side of that crossing next to Rowan's. So there's an opportunity that they're taking advantage of to put, I think, 15 or 16 spaces there. And they also purchased a parcel. If you're standing at their front door looking out to the right across the street, which they're trying to get permitted for another 18 or 20 parking spaces. So, we've been doing it. Mr. Boudreau at the Anchor's been doing it. The folks who own Mission Boathouse have obligations to park people off site. Everybody's kind of pulling together to try to make sure that there's enough parking. I'm sure there'll be some learning curve and growing pains this summer. But summer is the high season for everybody to want to be down at the waterfront, and so that's what we're trying to get ready for.
Yeah. Now let's talk about some of the other construction projects. Now the road and sidewalk construction, like along Cabot Street. Tell us what has happened on Cabot Street. There are a lot of changes.
Yeah, I can tell you that the Cabot Street project was meant to be from Cornick's, it's an old name, Brown's Bikes, the Cabot Lodges, right there at the corner of Pond Street, down to Broadway, okay, across from City Hall,
Right.
where Cabot and Broadway, Cabot and Thorndike are. We didn't go all the way there. We stopped at Bow, and that was 2 years ago, and now we're completing the sidewalk work and the lighting and whatnot from there to Broadway. So that's, people drive by right now. I mean, they may have to detour around the neighborhood, and the sidewalk work has been going on for some time. I would say that sidewalk work will be done pretty soon. They're making great progress, and it'll be vastly improved for everybody using the downtown, and also for the business owners, whose storefronts are on that part of the street. So I'd ask people, please keep going in to those stores and those restaurants during the construction, and once it's done and they're able to put more tables out on the sidewalk and it's easier to get in and out, let's all make sure we keep patronizing folks who are doing a great job down there.
That's the whole idea. Yeah, make it attractive, make it a fun experience to go down there and shop and go to the restaurants. And
so there'll be better lighting. It'll be more the complete streets model. There'll be more bump outs to make it safer to cross.
Yeah,
and that's the model that every city and town in the world is using. To try to make their downtowns places that more
Right.
people are going to frequent by bike, by scooter, by walking, by driving. It's when you drive through downtown, you need to understand that it's everybody's space, and that's really to make it safer, so that it's. I think for 60 or 70 years there was a different mentality, and it's changing everywhere. And the vitality of local downtowns is a big thing and a big piece of communities' livability. So I think it's a great project. There's more to do, but for now, for this year, it's to get us to Broadway and make those improvements.
right. Now
And there will be a repaving once all the sidewalk work is done.
Okay.
The paving has got to be the last part. You got to get all the curbing set and the ADA compliable, sidewalk crossings and all that. And so it's all good, and it's just it's taking a little bit, but we're getting there.
Now, the Essex Corning Spring Street intersection, and for our viewers, that is where right by Montserrat, the Montserrat train station, there is a traffic light that's going to go in there, right? So tell us about that. I mean, is that in response? Have there been a lot of accidents at that location, or what's going on there?
There have been accidents over time, over the years, and it's a tough intersection. It's a dangerous intersection, no matter which way you're navigating it. Where Corning and Essex and Spring come together. So it's been on the books for the last several years to try to move it forward. We'll be meeting with the neighbors as an update in early July. We thought we were ready to move forward with it about a year ago, and it became clear that there was more conversation required with the MBTA than the traffic engineers that we hired had originally put in. Mm-hmm. And so when that became clear, we also realized that we needed to get some additional outside expertise on railroad crossings and traffic movements. So that process has been underway with the MBTA for a little bit now, and we're hoping it'll wrap up soon. The idea being that you have to plan for a traffic light at the intersection of Spring and Essex, and how the arrival, the impending arrival of a train into the station needs to be met. Yeah. You think about the traffic lights in North Beverly at 1A by Nick's Roast Beef. All of that detection technology and that what you call preemption is in place.
Yeah.
Where when a train comes, there's a warning given, and there's a period of time for the light to turn yellow to red in another direction to make sure that direction coming up Dodge onto 1A clears before. So there's not the potential for somebody to be stuck on the tracks.
Right.
And that same kind of planning, design, and technology to support it needs to be in place over at Montserrat. And so right now our hope is that that'll all get sorted and completed in the next several weeks to couple months, and we'll be able to move forward. So it's an update to the neighbors. It's happening in early July, and we'll see what the schedule then says for when the actual construction work in that intersection begins.
Now, putting up a light. Now, what does that entail? Anything with the street surfaces or anything like that, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this. First, the state requires you look at a roundabout whenever you're doing work at an intersection, and we've had great success with roundabouts. Over by the highway at Victoria, Rocky, and Sawyer Road, the one in Centerville, and we're working with the state on designing a third one in that area over by Brimble Ave and Dunham Road.
Yeah.
We couldn't do one at Corning because there's not enough right-of-way. There's not enough city-owned land around the intersection.
Yes.
And if you just take a look, you see how residents' property lines, they've got fences or stone walls or driveways. Their houses are very close to the property line. So there's not the ability. So then the second thing is to look and look at a traffic light. And so we will be, said most simply, you take Spring and you take Corning, and we'll be squaring them both up a little better, particularly Spring. Squaring it up because it comes to Corning at an angle. It comes to Essex at an angle.
Yeah.
Trying to square it up a little better, which will have Spring and Corning a bit offset from each other.
Yeah.
And so that is all factored into the design of a light, and then how many sequences there need to be in the whole cycle for a light. And so that's the kind of information that the traffic engineers bring.
Slightly less complicated than brain surgery, right?
And so they bring it, and then we all kind of bang it around. We've got some talented engineers on city staff, and then that all goes to the public conversation. And we had a meeting a while back in the parking lot at Montserrat with neighbors. We're going to try to do this early summer meeting in the Montserrat parking lot because we found that more people showed when it was right in the neighborhood. We'll have to have a bad weather option of going to City Hall. But
I wonder if our
and neighbors watching this don't know the date yet.
Yeah.
We're trying to nail down the date, and then everybody who lives in the neighborhood will get an invitation. So if anybody is watching and says, well, I haven't heard about it, they're going to in the next handful of days.
Our studio manager here, Kim Alline, lives in that neighborhood there, so he probably will be.
Yeah, I've seen him around.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Beverly Public Library. You've got a geothermal heat pump situation going in there. Tell us where that stands.
So this is a project. We need to replace the HVAC system at the library. And when you look at our climate action plan, when you look at just making sound decisions around where we're going with our building assets. We could have just done the same thing over again, but that would be buying into natural gas to heat and cool the building for the next 25 years again. So we're looking at geothermal, and we're really committed, I believe, to geothermal. We have a project manager, we have an architect, we're getting close to hiring on the construction manager, but we're finalizing the design. We're coming closer to finalizing the design. There will be, like at the police station, because we built this system into the police station, a number of 500-foot deep pipes where you run water down and back up.
Back up, yeah.
And it's the constant ground temperature year-round of about 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit that allows the system to work. You run the water through the ground through 25 to 30 of these pipes, and that ground temperature in the summer cools the water,
Yeah.
which helps to cool the building when that water then runs through the
Right.
building. And it's an electric heat pump-based system that takes that water and runs it through the
Right.
building system. In the winter, that 55 to 60 degree water warms the
Right,
building.
right.
So, that's the basis of the system. There's a larger dollar amount investment up front because of that underground infrastructure than the traditional, but there's a payback both in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, also in terms of electric cost for electricity, because we'll use less electricity than we do today in order to run it.
Now, we've only got a minute or two left, Mr. Mayor. So tell us about the Hull Whitaker Bridge project.
I'm going to give you two things. I'm going to give you a real lightning round of roads. We're doing Colin Street. You know that. It's been sidewalk work for months.
Yeah.
Before that, it was gas work. We're going to be finishing Colin Street from Heather Street to Brimble. We're going to be doing Russell Street either this summer or sometime during the fall. That's all prepped with new sidewalks. We are going to be doing a section of Hale Street and the Farms down towards 127, and we're going to be doing the section of Elliott Street that hasn't been done yet as soon as we can. That's from County Way out to the Danvers line. We also are going to be doing the Bridge Street project is set to start next spring, and this year we're doing a lot of water work under the street to prepare for it, improving the city's infrastructure. That's all road work. The Hull Whitaker Bridge project, that's the bridge the state closed a year ago.
Right.
The state committed to having 25% design plans ready for the temporary fixed span bridge to go across the Bass River. They finished those 25% design plans. They submitted them to themselves. It's a funny thing, right? MassDOT has to approve the plans. So the consultants that they hired submitted the plans. They're going back and forth with the MassDOT engineers and the VHB engineers. They committed to having those done this spring. They're done. They're going to present them to the city June 27th, Tuesday night. The details on the location are still being worked out, but it's going to be a 6:30 or 7 p.m. start. And we'll be pushing that information out. But June 27th in the evening, they're going to update the community on that. The other big piece that we're all pushing, and we're pushing hard on this, is to make sure the State Highway Department successfully works with the Coast Guard and the Bass Haven Yacht Club boat owners to make sure that they have the accommodations they need to get downriver and upriver during the construction of the temporary bridge, during the several years that the fixed span temporary bridge is what people use to cross back and forth. And, and while the permanent bridges of Kernwood and Hull Whitaker are both being torn down and rebuilt.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there, and we're working on it, really several days a week at this point, and we have been for months. And I know that the neighbors have been waiting for a real helpful update, and that's coming June 27th, and you folks will be filming it, I'm sure, because we'll be asking you to, and hopefully we'll get a great turnout, and people will be able to hear in person and ask the questions they need to ask of the MassDOT and VHB folks who are, we're pushing and pushing to get this project done right.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Well, Mike, Mr. Mayor, as always, thank you. And I'd like to remind our viewers that you've been watching City Scene with Mayor Mike Cahill. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski. Thank you for watching.